Well, the legacy media fawns over rapists and murderers, illegal aliens that are being deported, claiming to care about due process. Where were they when American citizens who essentially took a tour through the Capitol were raided in the dead of night, thrown into DC Gulag, forced into taking plea bargains, and their entire lives destroyed? We're covering that with a brave woman who took her chances and refused to take a plea deal. Also, we are praying our way through the headlines. The news you need to know, but with solutions and hope. This is Get Free with Christy Lee.
People are not going to take it anymore. You are not going to take away our church care. You are not going to take away our votes and our freedom that our men died for. This is all we fucking live, and we, the people.
That is Gina, and we are going to be talking to her. She's a January 6er who has one heck of a story. She's coming up in just a bit, but we are covering the news of the day, and there is no boring day lately. So much news being covered, another full schedule for President Trump, including a long press briefing today, having to answer the question about these deportations, the illegal aliens, the traditional legacy media. They just won't let it go. So they're continuing to hammer poor Caroline Leavitt about that issue and how that's going, as well as the tariffs. We recently heard from Scott Bessent, who was talking about how, the media loves to focus on just tariffs and not the fact that we have a three-pronged approach to this: tariffs, tax cuts, and deregulation. And so if you take all three and you look at the big picture, then you might understand how, tariffs might not be such a bad thing moving ahead. So they were covering that. And President Trump is continuing to sign a bunch of executive orders. But to cover more of the major headlines lately and today, we want to welcome in Lori Colley. She writes and produces Praying Citizen newsletter to keep patriots and truth seekers updated on current events. With her husband, Bob, they sort through the noise and nonsense to provide excellent content and prayer points on politics and culture. They'll tell you not only what's going on, but why it matters and how you can pray about it. I just love this initiative, very in line with what I'm trying to do and what I like to do. So welcome in Lori Colley. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Christy. It's good to be here. When I was putting this one together, it just dovetails so well with what you were just talking about. Everybody's focused on, quote unquote, the Maryland father, who's actually been found twice to be a member of an MS-13 gang, and he is an El Salvadorian. So why do people care so much when the real news is what's happening in our nation, in our state capitals? Because a lot of us don't know who our representative, we know on the national scale who's representing us in Washington, D.C., but we often snooze through the local news and what's happening in the states. And so I wanted to talk about that just a little bit today. And basically, we have to take a stand against confusion. And of course, I'm talking about gender confusion and the confusion of, what are our rights as people populating the earth, rights given by God that they're trying to take away. And so I thought we would start across the pond in Great Britain. We'll look at Australia. We'll look at Canada, because all these English-speaking nations were birthed out of the Great Britain. And it seems like the globalists have already conquered places like Germany and other spots in Europe. And so now they're coming to the United States, and they're doing it adjacent to this terrible stuff that they're doing to take away freedoms in foreign countries. So, as Christians, as patriots, and as truth seekers, we have got to take a stand and resist what they're trying to do. So let's look at this confusion and chaos. 1 Corinthians 14:33 says that God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. So we know that if it's not God that's authoring this stuff, it's coming out of Satan. So as we go through this, I would love for your audience to just consider the fact that, yeah, it's far away, but it's coming here and it's already here. So in England, this is just the strangest story. People literally have forgotten that they have rights. So there is this partially deaf man, and I've got the clip, where he is apparently he's speaking to a foreigner. They're being invaded by Muslims and people from other non-Christian nations, and literally the government prefers the immigrants, just like here, over the people that are native born. So here's this man, and he's trying to speak to somebody else. He can't hear him. He can't understand him. So he asks him to speak clearly, and then somebody turns him in, and the police show up. So let's listen to that clip.
If you do, that would be really handy for us. But apparently, during some conversations between yourself, apparently you have alleged, and we weren't here, so I don't know who said it, but you've alleged to say, speak English, or what's that effect?
Speak clearly.
Speak clearly.
No,
okay.
the gentleman's partially deaf.
Yeah, he can speak clearly.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even hear him.
No, and that's fine, and that's why we've just come to speak, because potentially someone could perceive that as a hate crime.
Did we just know this was going to happen?
No, I know.
People, if someone says to me, officer, I believe this, then we need to look at it, because someone's potentially reporting to me.
Wow, I mean, that is so. I don't even have words. Like, I cannot believe it's come to this. A deaf man asking someone to speak clearly, and someone gets that easily offended. It could be considered a hate crime. I mean, gosh, these are the same people that will go after people for praying outside of a clinic, and it becomes a thought crime. This is scary stuff, and it's not covered nearly enough.
It's not. And, my point is, if the media would cover it, then people would be more aware. It's just kind of these little clips that are there on X or TikTok or wherever. But we probably should be paying attention. And like you said, Great Britain put a woman in prison for praying silently outside of an abortion clinic. And in Scotland, if your home is located near an abortion clinic, you can go to jail for praying in your home. Because
I just can't believe it.
It's crazy. Abortionists and immigrants are placed above everything else. It used to be the disabled. Well, forget them if they're white, So there were, other things going on there. A woman was sentenced 3 years in prison when she used strong language to advocate for mass deportations. Now, she did happen to say, "When I don't care if their hotel burns down," because they're being housed in hotels just like they are here. But she put it on social media, and she's in prison. And then a man was sentenced to 20 months in prison for posting that he didn't want to see illegal aliens being given free stuff with his tax money. Okay, so Canada, closer to home, really liberal. They are in the midst of a change in government, and they will pull us into the abyss if they can, socially and politically. So if they elect this liberal government, they have something that was out there a few years ago, went away, came back. It's called the Online Harms Bill. It fines hate speech online at up to $50,000 an offense. Then it has they're imposing Section 13 of the Human Rights Act, which punishes people for what they might say. Oh, they're able to read minds, I guess, because they know what you might say. And then maybe you change your mind, but too bad you already had that thought. So you could go to prison for that. And they can go back to your timeline and pull stuff out of the past and put you in prison for that. And then they will be, this is the worst of it. What happens when you watch these cuckoos online? Well, now they're going to, if this passes, they will crowdsource complaints so that online radicals can turn you into the commission, an unelected group that can sentence you to prison. So,
and I mean, we can see the reality of that happening. so easily. I mean, you have all these people willing to turn on their own people. You know, it used to be cool to get a green car. It used to be part of the liberal agenda. And so if you got a Tesla, you were applauded. But now on a dime, they can basically give marching orders to attack anyone with a Tesla, and and then you become a target. And so it's easy to see how, in the same way, if people don't like what you're saying, then they can mass report. I mean, they're already doing it. Let's be honest. Like, if people want to attack you and they don't like what you're saying, they can mass report your account and basically get it the algorithm to have not people see you, or get you a some kind of a flag or something, just for the mass reporting. So I mean, that's already happening to some degree. It just hasn't gone to the degree of like getting jailed for it or fined for it yet.
Right. Yeah, we're almost there, like you said. And then in Australia, this one I just found yesterday, New South Wales has criminalized normal things that you do at church, like as long as it's connected to a person's gender. So prayer and teaching what the Bible says, if it helps someone retain their God-given gender or ignore same-sex attraction, that is against the law. So a pastor who has someone come to him and says, I'm struggling with such and such, the pastor is breaking the law to counsel the person to read their Bible and see what the Bible says about it. I envision the day when the Bible is hate speech, right? I mean, it's just right there on the fringes. So here are the things you get prison time for. Praying with someone who asks for help if it's about gender or sexuality, advising a friend on exercising self-control, arranging support for your child who's gender confused, or leading a Bible study on biblical sexuality. It's just, but we get the government that we deserve to a certain extent, because this is what happens when people aren't paying attention, and we're asleep at the wheel, and these, Satan's directing these people to come in and do these things. And now we're waking up hoping it's not too late. So let's see. So here in the U.S., everything's crossing the pond, everything's getting here across the land masses because of the internet. And then there's an evil superpower behind it, right? So Satan comes to confuse, to steal, kill, and destroy, cause chaos, and he's attacking the homes here in the United States. And a few years ago, you didn't hear about a child deciding they're the wrong gender. You didn't know anybody. And now I can count on at least one hand the number of friends who somehow, in their family are dealing with this kind of stuff, with confused children. So Massachusetts, there's this video going around, and it's about this sex survey that was given in Burlington schools in Massachusetts. And this is literally the most extreme I have heard of. It's given to middle school students, so 11-year-olds, without their parents' permission. So they send the permission slip home to the parent to say, do you want your child to be able to participate in the survey? The parent can say no. Well, it doesn't matter, because the school does it anyway and forces the children to take these surveys. So parents go to the school board to complain about it, and because they have seen the screenshots, or children are taking the screenshots and sending it home and saying, Mom, look what they're asking us to do. And these are X-rated questions. So I've got this clip. It's a long clip, but I just wanted the two dads at the end, because men have a way of, cutting to the chase. These two dads complaining about this survey.
But I went to practice the other night, the night of the survey, and I hadn't seen my son yet because I didn't come home from work. I went straight from work to his practice. And there were no less than a dozen parents sitting in a circle talking about how horrible this was. And when I showed up, they knew that I'd be of like mind. So we had this discussion. I was terrified. And then I spoke to my son, who was opted out and was told that he had to sit down. So each parent has the same story. We were opted out, and it wasn't honored. And this is not the first time. It happens repeatedly, over and over and over again. It needs to end. And it's not an oversight. So you can say, well, this wasn't done intentionally. It's been done intentionally, if not by the people sitting in this room, which I have a different opinion on. But again, who are the architects of this thing? And if I do more research than the people that are being paid to do it, that's a problem. And it's not hard to find. These people that are behind this stuff, it's disturbing.
Explain to me what I'm supposed to tell my 11-year-old daughter about butt and anus sex and sex toys. Please, I'll give you the rest of my time.
So, I mean, that's basically what's in the survey then. I mean, that's so alarming. They can't even prep their kids for this. I mean, and this is a gateway to how kids can be groomed when they're not ready for these conversations. It is I mean, I've talked to a child psychologist before who said that this is a trauma response with kids that are not ready to think or hear or see these topics.
It's horrible. And I did see, again, floating around a video of a woman who is in OnlyFans, the pornography, whatever. I don't know that much about it, but she was saying that she was introduced to porn when she was 11 and basically doesn't know life without it.
Yeah,
so
I saw that as well.
It's just disturbing. We have to get control of our children, but they don't want us to have control. And they go for the kids because once they start grooming them, it's very hard for the parents who have very little time with their children to make up for the 8 hours that the child has spent under the hands of these groomers instead of learning, geopolitics and mathematics. They're being, groomed. All right. So before we get to the big story, which is this bill in Colorado, which we have time to stop. I don't know that will happen, but I just want to talk also another thing in Massachusetts. So there was a family homeschooling. They have 5 children altogether. It's a him and a her situation. I think one child is not his. Anyway, she takes the baby who's 9 months old to the doctor. The doctor insists, the pediatrician, on the child getting the shot, whatever it was. And she says, no, I'm not going to do it. So the doctor turns them into the state, and the state comes after the family. The family splits up, flees to Texas. They are all caught, and dad is in jail right now without bond, so he can't even get out. And mom is being arraigned this week, and the children have all been turned over to the state. So,
wow.
There might be more going on. I mean, we don't know who these people are. Maybe they were abusing the children, but all we know right now is that the fact that they didn't want to vaccinate was enough for this doctor to turn them into the state.
It's so scary. And so, I mean, that's why you have to be careful about who you tell anymore if you choose not to do the traditional things. There's many situations where if you get a checkup or if you have to run your kid to the ER, let's say because they split up, had any kind of old accident happen, they'll always ask at the ER, are your child up to date? And frankly, I don't think that's the ER's business. So, I mean, anytime we get those kinds of questions, it's just like, yep, to my standards, they're up to date. So it was just say, because I think it's out of line for them. I mean, that's so personal. These are personal decisions. And so it's so scary that the state can get involved, and even there's very fundamental things that you are just wanting to follow your parental conviction on.
Yes. And you do have to be careful. And there are some doctors out there who are more natural doctors, and they'll be like, yeah, that's okay. We'll wait till your child is older to do the vaccinations. I remember I have twins, and when they were 5, somehow I'd forgotten back in the day to get their I just was busy I have 4 kids altogether, like you have a lot of children. I forgot to get them their vaccinations when maybe they were 3. They were never sick. Maybe there's a little clue there, but I took them for kindergarten, and they said, oh, they're missing all these shots. So I had to take them to get like 4 shots at the same time. And, maybe that was better than having had the shots, when they were smaller, although back then we didn't do, this was 30 years ago. We didn't have as many shots as you do now. But yeah, it's
like 10 times as many shots or something insane now. I believe like the last figure was like 87 shots, altogether. It's something wild like that when, I mean, it was obviously much less for the time frame that you're talking about. And so, yeah, I mean, it's wild.
So then here's this bill in Colorado. And this thing has made it through the House. It's sitting with the Senate. It's going to be, it's a Democrat-controlled, way Democrat-heavy Congress in Colorado. And so it's probably going to pass. Democrat governor, he'll sign it into law. But the sick thing about this is this bill, of course, it's coded language. So if you just read it and you're not really thinking like an evil person, you would miss what's really going on here. But it takes away parents' rights to share their opinion with their children about transgenderism, and it removes the children if mom and dad don't support a gender transition. And it doesn't matter if it's a 5-year-old child. That if the child complains to the teacher, then the state gets involved. So the bill enumerates what they call the best interests of the child, and it criminalizes coercive control. Okay, so that would include using the child's given name if the child wants to change it. This is also called dead naming, a punishable offense, or misgendering. So if you refuse to call your daughter he, and that child turns you in, well, you're going to jail. So you can't deny them genital mutilation or cross-sex hormones. And we don't even know the full extent of the danger of these things because it's only just really started becoming very popular. But it's damaging. You can't replace what body parts you lop off. And then if you use the wrong language, that's considered child abuse. So the schools, of course, even the charter schools and the public and neighborhood schools have to use new names. If a boy wants to wear girls' clothes to school, as long as it's part of the dress code, they can do that. It's just sick. So it's HB 1312, giving a child the right to decide on his own upbringing, his own education, and his own care, which means you can't spank. I mean, I spank my kids. They're pretty good citizens today. You can't take away a cell phone. You can't give them a timeout. If the child doesn't want to go to church, you take them to church. You can get in trouble. So one dad in Colorado, and it's already kind of there, even though they haven't fully implemented it. He's fighting to keep his 14-year-old son from being sterilized, at least until he's 18. But mom wants it done now. They have joint custody. So while the court is deciding on behalf of the mom, the son starts having doubts because he's starting to think, do I really want, to lose this particular body part? And dad is not allowed to talk to him about what the doctors are actually going to do. He's told either affirm your son's transition or your ex-wife gets full custody. I mean, what a tragedy. And then for a dad to have to stand by and watch that happen to his son, it's got to be absolute torture. So the strategy, but see, the Democrats just didn't wake up one day and go, oh, let's do this. It's funded by the NGOs. They've got all these groomers already in place in the schools. They have basically the groomers, however, they coerce the lawmakers to put this stuff into practice, and they spring it on parents at the last minute. They spring the legislation out there, and then they call a rule so that there can be no discussion on the bill. And that's their strategy because they know if people were paying attention, they would, and they had time, they would say absolutely not. So they just have all these different things that they do in order to get these things passed. They compare the people who are against it to the KKK, of course, and say that the parental rights groups were excluded from the hearing before the bill goes, for a vote because they're not part of the LGBT community. So you don't get a say in this. So I want to play this little clip. So there's two people on the clip. So we've got this woman who's at the end. Her name is, I'm going to probably slaughter it. Representative Yara Zoki. She says a well-stakeholdered bill does not need to be discussed with a hate group, and we don't ask someone passing civil rights legislation to go as the KKK or to allow the KKK their opinion. Well, so what that means is when you have a stakeholder, it means the people that should really care about this bill are the ones that we should really listen to. So basically she's saying that the LGBTQ rights groups are the only stakeholders in this equation. We don't really care what the parents think because it only matters what the stakeholders think. And so then the other person in the conversation is this Representative Caldwell, who is completely against it. And I think in this clip he explains that it was sprung on them at the last minute, and there was not much they could do about it. So we play that.
We'd heard from multiple witnesses that this bill has been worked on for over a year. I will say I learned about this bill yesterday. It was introduced Friday evening. I really am curious about how much stakeholdering went on both sides of the issue, and if parent groups that are not a part of the LGBT community, if they were involved.
A well-stakeholdered bill does not need to be discussed with hate groups. And we don't ask someone passing civil rights legislation to go ask the KKK their opinion.
But I agree, there's no reason to go to the table with people who are echoing the hateful rhetoric going around about the trans community.
I mean, to infer that a parent is not a stakeholder, I mean, when it comes to the well-being of their own children, regardless of the opinions, I mean, what twisted logic to use?
It's unbelievable. And you get it outside of their hearing, and you spread it abroad, and people are going to be upset about it, but they don't. Yeah. And it's why they have to keep it just hidden and secret. So I think, and then Zoki goes on to explain that this is, they got this legislation from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is in Montgomery, Alabama. I used to live just a few miles away. That building has armed guards outside of it. You can't walk past the Southern Poverty Law Center on the sidewalk and stop, or one of those guys with a gun will tell you to keep moving. So, that kind of tells you the mentality of this group. I mean, they're just a radical group. They started out trying to defend civil rights, and they're absolutely berserk now. And they're a charity. They're a very wealthy charity. But then a few years ago, it was found out that they were racist within their own organization. So, go figure. But so with this whole thing, what we learn is they're always going to use coded language to hide what they're actually doing. They're going to act suddenly. They'll smear the watchmen. They'll smear the parents. They'll have assets in place such as they've got some of these stupid surveys come out of the CDC, these sex surveys. Hopefully no more. The NGOs, they have the groomers, set up in the schools, because where pedos going to end up, they're going to end up in places that are close to children. So it's the same thing with the groomers. You've got the FBI, we remember with the Catholics, going after traditional Catholics and calling them, domestic terrorists. So you've got this whole orchestra of people in government, out of government, in the schools, in the school boards, wherever, because you've got the family under attack. You have parents that aren't in the home. You have parents that are split. You've got the school taking control of the child for so many hours a day because the parents are working. And it's just this all-out attack. And then they're going to call you. If you stand up and say, well, wait a minute, this doesn't sound right, you're going to get labeled a KKK, a racist, a homophobe, you name it. So I think, the first recognizing is the first step. And so we've got to fight back. We got to bring the 3 Ps: prayer, our presence. So go to your school board meeting, go to your, make sure you know who your local representatives are, and then be persistent about it and don't give up, because God says if we just stand against the enemy, he'll eventually flee from us. So I have some prayer points, unless there's anything else you want to talk about.
No, we can get to the prayer points. That's
Okay,
ultimately
good.
because going through all that, Lori, is like, oh man, like it can be depressing to face the evil. And so and I appreciate that we have an action plan, things to specifically pray about.
Yeah, good. Okay, so just that God would continue to wake people up, spread information, light a fire, that he would light a fire under patriots, praying citizens, and truth seekers, because as each person wakes up, then they become part of our army to fight all this stuff, especially not just here, but in Great Britain, in Canada, in Australia, in other English-speaking countries especially. And then that God would clean out the FBI, because I don't know about you, but I'm hearing some stuff that maybe the FBI is, a lot of these terrible deep state people are still there. And I know that was the trouble the last time around, so that God would just clean it out, and that he would, return sanity and peace to this country. And that's my prayer every day, because it starts with us, each one of us cleaning out our hearts, repenting, being in right relationship with God and with each other. And then together, we are an army of the Lord.
Yes. And I love how it all goes back to the verse you started with, 1 Corinthians 14:33, which talks about God is not the author of confusion. So we can pray against that with the word of God and ask for the peace that he promises, and that he promises to give freely to those who ask. So such a great way of looking at these things that are happening, so we can stay encouraged and continue to fight against the evil and expose it.
Exactly.
And so, Lori, if people want to, go ahead.
Yes. Yeah, no, I just wanted to invite people to, I'm on Substack. It's just Lori Colley at substack.com. And then I'm on X. It's under my account is all screwed up because I had to take my husband's account, but it's Lori Colley. You can find me on X, and it'll say Bob Colley sometimes. So, but that's where
well, I mean, the two shall become one. So, Lori,
yes.
you are a unit in the eyes of God. So, yes, Lori Colley, Bob Colley, and we appreciate what you're doing, continuing to look at everything through a biblical worldview and through the lens of how God would want us to see these issues and ultimately pray for them. So, thank you so much, Lori, and we will definitely be having you back again soon.
Thanks.
The world's smartest investors aren't buying oil stocks. They're collecting mailbox money from oil royalties instead. I'm talking about passive income that shows up month after month, starting with as little as $25. Visit ChristieOilBoom.com to discover how to tap into monthly royalty checks from America's most productive oil basin. You don't need to be wealthy. You just need a regular brokerage account. That's ChristieOilBoom.com to learn how you could start collecting oil royalty checks every month.
FBI agents raid an apartment in Beverly Hills, arresting a woman accused of storming the Capitol.
FBI agents and Beverly Hills police descended on the home of Gina Bisignano this morning at an apartment building on Palm Drive. Bisignano is now facing federal charges for her involvement in the Capitol riots on January 6th.
Gina Bisignano, she is an outlaw, and she is here with us today. And man, it has been a wild ride, but particularly for those that were targeted and their whole lives were turned upside down. So we want to bring in Gina Bisignano to tell us her story and how things have been since she's gotten pardoned. But this is something that we want to keep front and center in the news, because it's not something that they get to just brush under the rug. This happened. Gina, I was talking about at the very beginning of the show. It is wild to see all this legacy media losing their minds, saying that these illegal criminal aliens are not getting their due process, when we had to see people like you, American citizens, rounded up, raided in the dead of night, scared families. I know one pregnant woman miscarried because of the attacks. I mean, it's wild what we saw happen to American citizens, and now the legacy media is like flipping out over illegal aliens. Are they getting their due process? Where was that when American citizens were rounded up, right?
MS-13 gangs and illegal catch and release who kill 12-year-old little girls and rape, and it's unbelievable. And they're actually fighting for their rights. The legacy media, it's crazy.
I mean, that's got to feel personal, I would imagine, to you. Like, where were they when people like you were a beautician, you love America, you were going to these rallies, exercising your free speech, and then suddenly it's like the world turned against you, right?
I mean, I essentially was ostracized by everybody. Like, I spent 14 years building up my business as a single mom, and then all those people just disappeared. It's like the day that I went to go pay my bail after I got raided by the feds, Washington revoked my bail. And so they put handcuffs on me and they said, surprise, Washington revoked your bail. So they put handcuffs on me. They arrested me and they put me in solitary confinement because of COVID for 1 month. So I wasn't even able to call my son for the first month.
Oh my.
The second month, they lost me in the airplane. So, look, I was out there, I protested. As far as I'm concerned, if they wanted to protect the Capitol and it was so out of bounds that day, why was it open to the public? Why was it so easily accessible for us to just walk up there, right? I thought we were allowed to practice our First Amendment rights and to stand up to a stolen election, and I have videos where I walked up to the Capitol and I said to myself, Lord, I'm going to walk and I'm going to protest. And when they tell me to turn around, I'm going to turn around. And they never did. They let us walk right up into the tunnel. And then all of a sudden the doors open. The police started shooting us with rubber bullets. They started spraying us with bear spray. I just remember getting hit on the right side of my leg, which to this day still hurts. Even last night I was sleeping and the pain in my leg was so intense. And I'm like, it just comes and goes. Yeah, I was up on the side. They hit me with a bat and I fell into this crowd. I was squashed. And as I was being squashed, there was people underneath. Somebody underneath me died. But I worked my way up because I'm strong. I'm that strong that I could work my way up. Thank God I work out, And then I went over to the side of the window where I stayed for like 4 to 5 hours. I couldn't see, I couldn't breathe. And I find it very peculiar how somebody handed me a megaphone and they say, tell them we need weapons. The boys don't, they're in the room. And I said, we need weapons for protection. The boys don't want to leave. That is because there was men in that window that did not want to leave. They wanted to camp out because they were so upset about a stolen election and nobody listening to us. But we know they just shot somebody, like the rumor went around. So I went in and I said, please, guys, you got to come out. You got to leave. They're not playing anymore. They're actually shooting to kill. So I went in and I wonder where that footage is. And then I came out and I still couldn't really see. Like, as you could see, my eyes were all covered with bear spray and makeup. And it was just a very, very, so much
chaotic. Chaotic. Yeah, but I like what you said about, like, if anyone had given us direction, if anyone had told us to turn around, but there was no direction, it was actually encouraged. We've seen the videos of them opening up the gates. We've seen some videos that still have not been explained to this day that are very suspect.
It's really odd.
Yeah. And so really, what is your confidence on, now that we have a new administration, what is your confidence that we will get to have a new January 6th committee, that we will get to see some accountability and find out? I mean, come on, like, I am frustrated that we have Kash Patel in there who him and Dan Bongino have talked endlessly about, we're going to get to the bottom of the pipe bomber and what that was and who that actually was and the plan. It's frustrating that we haven't heard anything. I mean, Dan Bongino is saying, like, trust us, but I mean, people have been waiting a really long time to see some justice and truth and accountability when it comes to this day. So what are your thoughts and feelings on that?
Exactly. I mean, what do they have over these people? right? It's like Nancy Pelosi obviously set it up that day. Okay. She denied the National Guard because the optics didn't look good. Okay. If it was so sacred and the votes were being voted, counted that day, and Mike Pence was going to proceed over it and decide if he would certify the election, why didn't they protect that area? Why was it so open and accessible to us, right? It's very odd. And then again, we have Kash Patel right now. We have Pam Bondi. It's like we need answers, okay? We want to find out who the pipe bomber was, and we want to find out why there was no protection, why the National Guard wasn't called, okay? I think essentially they knew that we felt full of vigor, full of fury that day. We were Americans that felt that they were wronged. And when we walked up to that Capitol, we were full of emotion and very, very vulnerable at that point. And I think that whoever set it up, or perhaps the Pelosi or the left, they took advantage of the vulnerable people, the vulnerable Americans who felt very strongly about election integrity. I have a bit of PTSD about everything. So when I talk about it, it just affects me. My town ostracized me. My family pretty much deserted me, except for my son and my sister-in-law. And my sister sometimes talks to me, but they still make me feel really guilty about the events of that day and how stupid I was and how duped I was. And, I paid my taxes. I go to church. I try to walk the ways of the Lord. Like I try to be a good citizen to others. And I pretty much lost everything. I don't have a business anymore. I lost my bank account. I had grifter attorneys. We had attorneys like grifting on us, charging us hundreds of thousands of dollars to even put, for our representation. They wouldn't even accept us without $100,000. So we were very taken advantage of that day. And we're American citizens who love this country, who believe in closed borders, election integrity, low inflation. We want to enrich America from the inside rather than enriching the countries all on the outside. And we need justice. We need justice for January 6ers. We stood up to our country to a stolen election that day. And I believe we set precedents for the future, like you don't mess with our elections. And too many people took it lying down. We knew that our election was stolen, and American people were just ready to accept it, but we weren't. We wanted to practice our First Amendment rights and take a stand, right? And have them stop proceeding over the counting. We wanted them to take a look. We were begging the police, we're on your side. We don't want any violence. We just want them to hear our voices, and we want them to stop the proceeding and take a look at our evidence of election interference. And to no avail. They ended up confirming the election, right? And then throwing us all in jail and ruining our lives.
Yeah. What's interesting to me about you, Gina, is, I've talked to a lot of January 6ers that were targeted by the former DOJ, and many of them went ahead and accepted plea bargains because it was either like 2 decades behind bars, or maybe they would spend 6 months to a year in jail, or something. They made the plea bargains, the plea deals, very attractive. I can only count on my hand people that went ahead and stood by their convictions and said, I'm not going to say I did something I didn't do. Which still blows my mind, like the bravery and courage when you're not going to get a fair shake with the DC courts and everything. But you were one that followed your conviction not to take a plea deal. And so tell me about that and that decision and why you felt strongly about that.
That's so sweet of you. So I don't want to take all the credit there, because when they locked me up in the beginning, I didn't see sun for the first month. I was very sick because I had a nervous breakdown. I was so scared, it's like I didn't have any due process. They put me right in jail. So I didn't get to close up my apartment. I didn't get to tell my clients, hey, I can't come in. So I believe I had a momentary mind lapse. Like I just was like, where am I? What's happening? So after the month of not really eating, not having any kind of medication, not having any nutrition, my brother hired an attorney with my money, which it's okay. And I do understand they were only trying to protect me and they were scared. The attorney told my family I was named in the killing of a police officer. So before he even asked me, Christy, he never said, what do you want to do? Let me hear your story. He said, she's going to talk. She's going to be a witness. Okay. Not once did I say that's what I want to do. So he arranged all this for me. And then I had a hearing. So I heard, hey, you're going to see the judge. This is after I got to Oklahoma. Okay. They're like, hey, you're going to see the judge on Friday. He canceled hearings because he wasn't even equipped to work in Washington. He had to get he had to have somebody, Pro Hoc Vici. He had to have somebody stand in for him, for the representation of me in Washington. So he canceled the first hearing. So I had another week in Oklahoma jail. And he said, Your Honor, not once, Christy, did he say, what's your story? Never even saw the guy. I go there with my chains and my handcuffs and I look and I'm in front of the judge. All of a sudden I got this feeling of peace because I saw a judge that looked like a righteous man. I said, this guy is no fool. I remember him saying, Gina, what you said was a very bad thing. So remember what I said. It's what I said, my First Amendment, right? I didn't have any weapons. He said, hey, Your Honor, she's going to get some mental help and she's going to pack up her salon and move to Philadelphia, Your Honor. And she drank the Kool-Aid and she's going to cooperate, Your Honor. Not once did he ever say, do you want to cooperate? Like, what do you want to do? Like, you're paying me all this money. He never even contacted me or had a conversation with me. So after he spoke with the judge, I was let out. 6 hours later, I had no credit card, no money, no phone, no jacket. I'm in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma. I was trying to call his office. He never even picked up.
Good grief.
You want to know what I did? I called a friend on a payphone. He got on Facebook. Some wonderful Christian women from Oklahoma shut the jail and picked me up. And then they kept me for 2 weeks. So
wow.
I think the worst thing about it, Christy, was laying there in the bed in Bonnie's house, thinking I have to leave LA. Like I have to fight my case away from my home and my son. And I was so sick, like I could barely even talk. And she would try to get me up out of the bed, try to get me to walk. So the whole time he's saying, I'm going to be a witness. And I made a plea deal. So I spoke with him a week after I arrived back in LA. So 2 weeks after I got out of Oklahoma, because I couldn't get my ID because the storm was so bad. So when I got home, he's like, okay, now you got to fly back to Washington. You're going to cooperate. I'm like, what? I'm not in the mental capacity or the health to be able to travel. Like I'm too sick. Like I can't do this. I don't know what you want me to say. I don't have any information. All there is we were there, we protested, we got beat up by the police, and that's it. I don't know what you want me to say. He's like, you were involved with some bad people, Gina, and I need you to tell the truth. He goes, I want you to effing make it up if you have to. Yeah.
Wow.
I kept saying I'm going to fire my attorney, and my family's like, no, you can't. They helped my cousin when he was in a robbery, a lot years ago, point blank. There was a movie about it, my sister-in-law's cousin, and he got him off. But remember, these people are criminals. He works with rappers. He works with murderers, bank robbers, not people who are trying to practice their constitutional rights, right?
Yeah.
So when I got stronger, I couldn't leave my house. For 4 years, I stayed in. I couldn't make money. Okay, so I love being on these shows because I want to talk about my story. And
because
finally,
you were given an ankle bracelet after all this, right?
And I was
that's
on.
what, I think glossed over that part. That's why you were a prisoner basically in your own home, right?
But there's a place in Indiana would call me if I walked out of my house. I could not leave my house. I was literally stuck in my home for 4 years. The only time I could leave was on Sunday. I could go to church. But the thing that gets me is he never said, this man was not on my side. He wanted me to cooperate. And I'm like, how could I possibly cooperate? Christy, there was nothing, no information to give. I didn't have any inside scoop on anything. So he's like, you're going to make something up. I needed help. My family didn't trust me. They thought I was a wacko. They're like, oh, she's crazy. She went up to Capitol Hill. They couldn't believe that I did that. But I felt very strongly for my country. Okay. I grew up in the 70s. Like I was a baby, but the 80s. And I remember free America, where we could walk around with, not having to worry about locking our bikes up and not locking our doors. And we didn't have these people coming over the border and raping and killing our American citizens. It was just so different. We had election integrity. And I remember America being a free country. And I was watching as our country and the draconian rule was taking over. We couldn't go to work. We couldn't travel. Had COVID. So anyway, going back to the attorney, I got strength. And he said she's taken a deal. She's taken a plea deal. It took me 2 weeks. I'm going to tell you the story of this. 2 weeks for me to sign this plea deal. I went over to the federal office and they said, there was 5 police officers killed that day. You're going to sign this. And I said, I can't because I'm not guilty. Like I'm not going to plead guilty to something I didn't do. They go, Gina, your attorney wants to talk to you. He never once came and represented me. He did it over the phone. I went in the other room. He goes, you're going to effing plead guilty now. So I still didn't do it. I went home and his secretary called me. Finally, I signed the paper. I pleaded guilty, only to take it back 2 weeks later because I started to get my strength back.
Yeah.
I knew
you're like, wait a minute. No.
Yeah. Because mentally I was just so weak.
We're quickly running out of time. So I just want to make sure that you have time to wrap it up. What do you want to see happen now? Now that you've been through all of this?
And essentially, like I took everything back and I became strong and I testified on behalf of another. I just want to see January 6ers get vindication, some sort of to get like, they're what's it called? To get
reparations.
Reparations. Sorry.
Reparations.
Sorry,
I mean, it's not enough that you were pardoned, but I mean, no, it's fine. I get it. I mean, you've been through so much. But yeah, I do hear that the pardon was great, but it's not enough. I mean, everybody,
and we don't have any
your
businesses.
lives were destroyed. Your livelihoods were destroyed, and there needs to be justice. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just, to me, we were ostracized and we just need a head start. We need a little bit to get our businesses going. And we stood up for America for a stolen election. And people like you are having us on their shows. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm sorry, I just get a little nervous and tongue-tied. But we want to see reparations. And we still
What's the
have
best way that people can continue to follow you and support you?
Yeah, I'm trying to make a YouTube channel. It's really cute. And just giving my J6 experience. I also have a Give, Send, Go, Gina Bisignano. And I have an Instagram. It's Gina's Beverly Hills. So yeah, they can get in touch with me, ask me any questions. I'm available to talk. I'm an open book. But yeah, I did fight against the attorney. I also reported him to the bar and made a complaint. Yeah. And I ended up getting a public defender who was better than anyone.
Right.
So, and I never signed a plea deal. I took it back and I ended up going to trial. And I was getting sentenced to 10 years, January 31st.
Thank God that the Trump administration came in and you're able to pardon. And let's dig into that a little bit more next time I have you on, because the time it goes by so fast. But next time we can talk about, just you having to wait and see if we were going to get a new administration, see if things were just going to get worse or better. I mean, that had to been wild in and of itself. But we are out of time. Gina, please follow her. Her Gina Bisignano. You can see it right there at the bottom of the screen, how she spells that name. So you can find her on Instagram and her Give, Send, Go. And let's continue to support our January 6ers. Thank you so much, Gina.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. God bless you. You're awesome.
Thank you, you too. All right, we're going to squeeze in the verse of the day. It is from Matthew 7:13 through 14. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. It has been a tough road for those January Sixers, as many others were affected by the past 4 years. A hard road, but you can be encouraged that God will bless those that are willing to go through the hard times to stand up for what is right and what is true and what is noble. So take comfort in Matthew 7:13 through 14, even in the disappointing times. Well, thank you for watching. Support the sponsor of MyPillow.com, promo code KL. That's MyPillow.com, promo code KL, as well as KLBeef.com, KLBeef.com. Thank you for watching. Make sure you spread the word. Get free with Christy Lee right here on Lindell TV.